Oh,
Welcome.
thank you.
Um, so we have our center in Denver, Colorado, and we have not had our center open to the public now for many months. So we've also, like many others, taken our programming online. And my name is Christina Monson. I'm one of the teachers at the Padmasambhava Meditation Center. I see a video with someone named Clay. Hi, Clay. Are you joining us for the first time?
Hello. No, I took the I was there with the Rinpoche. I guess it's been a couple months now, and I saw
Okay.
that again. I thought I tuned into the YouTube, but it directed me here. So
Excellent. Okay. Excellent. Yeah. We're connected with Chidya Rinpoche on YouTube. I'm connecting with all of you from Nepal. This is where I've been spending this year, and usually I'm in the States for some time, but due to the pandemic, I've just hunkered down here. So this is our Thursday night meditation. It's an open meditation, which means it's just welcome to anybody and everybody, people who are part of our community in a more regular way, and just people who are also brand new to the practice of meditation. We get together every Thursday night and do some practice together and discuss a little bit as well. So I'm going to invite anybody who is sitting with a question regarding their meditation practice. I recognize several of our participants here, regular practitioners, regular meditators. Just an open question. Anyone have something on their mind tonight that they'd like to share with the group that we might also then consider as part of the practice we do?
I've been thinking about fluidity this week, and fluidity as it pertains to formal sessions, non-formal sessions, conversations, quiet, alone time, being online and being offline, these kinds of things, and what my mind is doing through the transitions and how it works in terms of its fluidity.
Thank you, Tracy. What have you seen?
There's a jolt that happens when the shift, like the Zoom call ends, and then it's like there's a space, but it's also recognizable. This feels really different. And then how, do I judge? Do I make an assumption? Do I try to process? Do I, how does the cognitive mind or like the thoughtful mind then grasp onto that experience, and then expectations or judgments or these kinds of things. So yeah, in and out of all of the different spaces through the transitions that happen throughout the day, meeting people inside the house, outside the house, things like that. Kind of reflective of what the weather's been doing in Colorado in the last 3-4 days. Like 100 degrees, 32 degrees. Beautiful sunny afternoon, 4 inches of snow on the ground. A little bit like that.
Yeah, we have all kinds of inner weather, right? Definitely the outer climate is in a state of chaos. I've been in touch with a lot of friends and close family on the West Coast. Maybe just bringing some to mind. I appreciate that. Tracy. I also was reflecting on, as you were speaking, as you said, kind of gap, right? Carl said it's a gap. I was working with a group on a program online just a couple days ago, and we were talking about how we cultivate the skill of deep listening, and that one of the barriers that gets in the way of listening is needing to fill the silence. So as I asked you that question this morning, I was ready to sit here for 10, 15 minutes. I was gonna test it out, see what would that be like to just sit here for 10 or 15 minutes if nobody spoke. Anyway, Tracy did speak, but that it's quite interesting to just observe our comfort with silence. And I would hypothesize that familiarity with a meditation practice can be a great support in comfort with silence as we communicate and interact with other people. And I was also thinking further about why would that be? Why would I even say that? And I think, as I just heard in Tracy sharing her experience as well, one of the core gifts of meditation is being able to understand and form a relationship to our inner world, our domain of consciousness that is not just thinking and thoughts and our plans and our analysis and our judgments and all of that. Oftentimes when we say mind, we think immediately. If I asked you, what is mind? What's mind? We go into a cognitive process. It's what's most familiar to us. We've been trained that way. A lot of people have been trained that way. Not everybody's been trained that way. So let's start training ourselves in a little bit of a different way. Meditation allows that. A bit of a space that you've intentionally created to make a distinction between conceptuality and all that is involved with that and something beyond, a space that's perhaps surrounding all of that and holding it. As Suzuki Roshi says, big mind and small mind. Small mind just being all of our thoughts, planning. Well, what's the space around that? What's the space that holds that? Yeah, with that kind of curiosity, let's do some basic sitting practice this morning. Basic sitting. When I say even those words, this is the practice of shamatha meditation. Experienced meditators may feel, oh, okay. Shamatha again, all right. Been there, done that. I got that one down. I need to find different language about it. This is the essence, the core. The core. Carl says hardly. Yeah, hardly. This is the practice that is the absolute foundation for other kinds of meditation practice that we might want to do, as well as any other kinds of meditation that we encounter on the path of Vajrayana or Tibetan Buddhism. The capacity to focus the mind and maintain that focus in single pointed concentration is the ground. It's really the foundation. It's actually a very advanced practice. It's so simple. And that's also what makes it very beautiful. So just to remind and kind of refresh ourselves in the basic elements of it, we pay attention to the posture first and foremost. And so we find a comfortable seat, and that might be in a chair for you. It might be sitting cross-legged on the ground. However you feel most comfortable, so you don't have excess tension in your body. And your back can be as straight as you can hold it. Ideally, it's unsupported. If you need that support behind you, then feel free to use that. But if you can sit without any support, and you really just let yourself kind of settle into a place that feels comfortable, imagining your back being held up, pulled up by a string, and then just gently settling back down. So you're not holding it with rigidity and tension, and yet there's alertness in your posture. I like to have my hands just resting on my knees. I usually have them palm face down. Other people feel comfortable with their palms facing up. I don't think it makes too much of a difference. I notice that I have my palms facing down because as I start with doing this practice, I'm kind of bringing my attention and awareness into a more confined space. When I have my palms up, for me, it's just a signal of kind of being more open and receptive. And when I begin this practice of shamatha, I'm kind of closing in and focusing. And so it helps me to have my palms face down. You also might rest your hands at your navel, one just resting in the other in the mudra of equanimity. Your chin is maybe just slightly down so that your gaze is about 2-3 feet in front of you. And we're going to use our breath as a support for this practice. And we use our breath as a support after first really settling into the body. And so kind of doing a quick scan, using your mind of your body, and just sensing where there might be a little bit of tension that you're holding from the day, or might be some slight discomfort, seeing if you can just adjust your posture a little bit to ease that. And getting a whole body sense where you are right now. Sitting in your room, connected through a computer to a group of 17 of us tonight. And I invite you to bring forth an intention for this practice of meditation. And that could just be to find some quietness and stillness. Maybe you've had a busy day. It could be to deepen the work that you're doing in the world by cultivating the capacity to be more powerfully present with yourself and others. Whatever intention you have for this next period of practice, kind of sense into what that is and just hold it, touch it for a moment. And we bring Now, our attention to the breath simply as a place to kind of tether it. We don't grasp onto the breath with 100% of our effort, but we let our attention focus on our exhalation, allowing our mind to ride that exhalation as it goes out and dissolve as it does naturally. When I say your mind, I really mean it's just your sense of you, your sense of being you. You, whatever that means, just kind of ride the exhalation out and dissolve. It's not conceptual, but your attention is focused on that process. You don't need to worry about the inhalation then. It just happens by itself. And then once again, you're back at the exhalation. And you, whatever that is feeling like, whatever sense you have of that, also then just travel out. And the exhalation just dissolves into the space that's all around us. So it's kind of a rhythmic dance that is one of training ourselves to focus our attention. And we use the breath as a support to do that. And whatever arises, thoughts, feelings, judgments, analysis, just notice if we are distracted by them and carried away with them and get caught in one thought after the next and that, and we just bring our attention then gently back to the breathing, to the exhalation. There's no other antidote except mindfulness to notice if you get distracted or when you get distracted. So with that as the technique, we'll sit together for about 12 minutes. Your body is supported by the earth. Breath is supported by the body, and the mind is supported by the breath. So your senses are wide open. You can hear, your eyes are not closed. You can feel sensations, and yet your attention is concentrated. If you feel your mind quite agitated, you can lower your gaze a little bit. If you feel sleepy or lethargic, it's helpful to raise your gaze a little bit. Notice if you're holding some kind of tension in your body as you are doing this. And you can just move whatever way feels good. Just kind of refresh yourself, hit the refresh button in your body. Maybe a couple deeper breaths as well to just center, like freshen up a little moment. And exhaling wherever you might be clenching or holding tightness, shoulders or face. And just return gently, attention. Breath is supporting the mind. Traveling out with the exhalation, dissolving again and again. Now, when you live next to a temple in Nepal, there's not stillness in the morning. So if you can hear the temple music that's playing, you can also use that as your focal point. Not listening to it, but just the awareness of hearing is where the mind rests. A great secret is that sometimes the most genuine moment of meditation occurs the moment you stop your session. Because that's when you totally relax. Whew. Watch that moment. Meditated for 12 minutes, and then you hear the gong, and it's that moment that you just drop everything. That's the place to continue. That's such a powerful instruction. It's not mine. It's not mine. I've been taught that by teachers of my own. Reflections, thoughts, questions?
Christine.
Hi, Nancy. Yeah.
I find that I'm thinking a lot about, is my mind going out? Who I am, and I think
Yeah.
I'm thinking too much instead of just letting it happen. Do you have any suggestions?
Thank you for sharing that, Nancy. And that's a bit of the problem with getting any meditation instructions, right? We want to remember them and apply them. And the way that we often start doing that is through thinking about them as we're doing the practice, right? There's a subtle balance between that mindfulness, the attentiveness to remembering what the techniques of the practice are, and recognizing if we have become distracted, and actually just thinking, right? So my sense of that, Nancy, is that kind of that grosser level, if you find yourself, what is me? And that's all just thinking. It's all the same. All thoughts are the same in being thoughts, right? So whether the thoughts about the techniques of the meditation practice that you're doing, or whether the thoughts about what you're going to make for dinner, they're the same in being thoughts. So it's kind of just that noticing, oh, I'm caught up in thinking. It doesn't really matter what the subject is. And the moment of noticing that, then just bringing the attention back. And the breathing as a support is so helpful because it takes us back into the body right away. So there's that aspect of then kind of grounding ourselves somatically that the breath allows. It's a little bit different than like a visual object that we might use. That there is then, I think, a moment, it might only be a split second, where you drop those thoughts. And it's really a process of having that split second become a second. And then it becomes a second and a half of a second. And then it becomes 2 seconds. And then it becomes 3, and it becomes 4. And that starts to gather strength on its own. I don't know, is that helpful, Nancy? Yeah? Other thoughts or insights? I'm very happy to sit with the stillness and the silence.
Would you say
Hi.
maybe, hi,
Yeah.
hello.
Hi.
Hi. Would you maybe say a little bit about the gaze and like having eyes open and switching back and forth, kind of like the interplay between coming to the breath and then coming to a visual object, and how to hold attention on the breath even though the eyes are open?
Thanks for that question. That's a great question. I would recommend, kind of for this practice, say the one that we just did, I really offered use of the breath as that focal point for attention. And when the breath is the support for the practice, then there isn't a visual support. So we're not using both, because then the mind is going to kind of be, split. The attention is going to be split. You can definitely use a visual object also as the focal point for a practice. And so I would choose one or the other. So if you're going to choose an object to focus your gaze on, to hold your visual consciousness as a support for your mind, you can put in front of you a picture or a statue, and then you're not worrying about the breath. The technique is not the breath. The technique is holding your mind on that support. In the tradition that I have been trained in, the eyes are kept open, regardless of whether the support for the practice is a visual object or whether it's the breath. And so the key point of that is because it's not about shutting out phenomena. It's not about shutting out perception. It's about training ourselves to have our mind stay wherever we put it while we are wide awake, all senses open and receptive. So I would say the practice becomes just progressively and increasingly very, very, very refined and profound. And closing the eyes. Now, if you are starting a session of meditation and you've had an exceptionally busy or stressful day and you've got lots of stuff just going around in your head, you might just feel comfortable to close your eyes as you start, as a way of just calming and settling yourself down. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no problem with that at all. I would encourage at some point then for you to open your eyes and train in a meditation practice where you do have your eyes open. But you're not, again, looking around. There are things seen. And when I mentioned, Clay, that, and this is a helpful technique, if you notice lots of thought activity, your mind just seems really, really active, lowering the gaze, looking down is a great antidote to that. It helps calm that excessive agitation. And the opposite is also true. If you feel like you're in fact going to fall asleep, and that can happen too. Sometimes, if you're having trouble going to sleep and you're thinking, what can I do? Then some people, okay, I'll meditate. And boom, as soon as you start meditating, you fall right asleep. I mean, that's not ideal. But if you notice you're really sleepy, then you can raise the gaze. It kind of brings the energy up a little bit more, just alertness can come forth from doing that. So you can raise or lower the gaze as techniques to work with whatever kind of mental state you find yourself in. Is that helpful? I should say, how is that? Does that address your question?
It does. It is, and it does. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Other insights. I have something I want to share with all of you. I'll pause for a second. If there's any more questions or insights. There's a word in Tibetan language that talks about, that really refers to what we are cultivating in this practice. And it means that we are, the word Lisu Rungwa, it's like we're making our mind workable. It's incredibly powerful to be able to place your mind somewhere and have it stay there. So in a secular context, all of the talk about the benefits of mindfulness and the entire secular mindfulness movement really hones in on the quality of focus that a practice of meditation strengthens. That's true. In some ways, that's part of what this Tibetan term, Lesi Rungwa, is talking about. The mind becomes very, very workable. And the beauty of this practice is its profundity. It's a practice that has been taught and refined over millennia. Within the tradition of Buddhism, this is a practice that has kind of a very, very well-marked freeway associated with it. And that is incredibly helpful for us because it allows us to see how does it actually progress and unfold. And so there's many different teachings on what is called the 9 stages of shamatha meditation. And we find teachings about this in very advanced meditation manuals. So in many ways, you know, as we started today, and I say, well, we start with the practice of shamatha, it's the foundation. It is the beginning and the end in some ways. And I wanted to share with you just a glimpse of some of the signposts on this practice's highway, freeway. They're very clear and they're very helpful in terms of getting a sense of how your own practice, where you are in your own practice. I'm not going to go through all 9 of them in depth right now. I just want to give you a little taste of it as an inspiration for your own practice. And one of the things to know about these 9 stages is that while certainly there's a progressiveness to them, it's not just a linear process. You may find in one session of meditation that you are experiencing several different stages in one session. And then in your next session, you might be in a different place. Generally, they unfold such that at the end, and the end means when we really have mastery of this practice, it means that the discipline of shamatha is just a natural expression. So I think kind of back to where we started with Tracy's question about, or just inquiry about fluidity. The 9th stage of shamatha practice is described as being equanimity. And it is connected with an experience of the mind like a motionless mountain. So it's like concentration has effortlessly merged with its object, whatever that object is, and it just rests there naturally. And the mind is then so workable. You're not tripping over yourself due to scattered attention, due to distraction, due to emotions that are niggling you that you just can't let go as you go about your activities of the day. It doesn't mean you don't feel things, doesn't mean you don't think things. But there's complete and total familiarity. And the practice is just kind of a natural expression. So that's the 9th stage. The first stage is called placement. And at this point, the experience is that the mind It's like, it can be like a cascading waterfall or paper that's just carried on the wind. There isn't mastery over the mind. Like we're not in control. It's like a wild, wild horse running around. And so here, the power that we bring forth is knowing the instructions on how to practice. So Nancy, as you were saying, yep, there is a technique here. We're working with a technique and knowing what that is. Not too loose, not too tight. There's some discipline, definitely, in doing the practice and in making the commitment to do it, finding that time, that discipline. The first 3 stages, often the mind can really just be experienced that way, like just a rush. In fact, you haven't even noticed how much of a rush of thoughts and activity is there until you sat down in stillness. And suddenly you start to see it and become aware of it. That's a sign of the practice. There's nothing bad about that whatsoever. It's a really positive sign. You're noticing. You're starting to develop a relationship with your mind. We go into the 4th stage, and at this point, the experience is more like water rushing through a gorge. So there's some control to it. That's the difference between the metaphor of just like a cascading mountain waterfall, just a rush, and water that's still moving very fast, but it's in a gorge. It's starting to be controlled. And at this point, the grosser level of thinking may be less, but there's a subtler level of concepts that can still be very, very dense. And here, the power that we really bring forth is the power of mindfulness. So really making sure that we are on to ourselves. There's a watching to notice, have I gotten distracted? Have I just spent the last several minutes planning something? So again, carried away. And sometimes that, being carried away by subtler thoughts is harder to notice, but mindfulness is needed for that as well. This moves into the next stage, the 5th, which is called taming. And here, then, the power of taming comes with really using whatever antidote is needed for excessive agitation, for laziness, for lethargy, whatever it is. Knowing how to bring a little bit more energy and alertness, knowing how to settle the mind if it is really jumping around. The experience a couple stages later in what is called the stage of pacifying is that the mind becomes like a flowing river, which if you see it from a long way away, it looks still. But when you come up really close to it, you can see the water is moving. So you might have a sense of stillness, motionlessness in the mind. And there are still some movement of subtle thoughts underneath it. So still one maintains that vigilance. Applying antidotes as needed, not applying antidotes if they're not needed. Familiar, it's developing a practice so that you have your own experience to then reflect upon and investigate in light of these instructions. I'll share this with everybody. I put it together the other day for something else I was doing. I'll see if I can actually drop it into the chat. The 8th stage is described as an experience of stability. And so the mind is like an ocean without waves. There's still effort using a focal point. But when you put that effort, you use a focus, whether it's an image, something visual, something audible, even the smell of incense. You can use any of the senses or mind itself, right? The breathing. Then the concentration is just uninterrupted. Remember, you say, you put your mind there, it stays there. And that opens up a whole world of possibility. And so the power associated with the 8th stage is that of just diligence, continuing to be diligent. Sometimes we translate diligence as enthusiastic joy, and there is a sense of enthusiasm and joyfulness in being able to work with the mind in a new way. It's not crazy anymore. Doesn't mean that that experience is one in which once we have it, we never go back and experience the mind as a rushing waterfall. We do, no. So that I'm saying these are progressive, and yet we could experience them in different sessions of meditation in many different ways. There's a fluidity about these stages as well. And as we deepen a practice over years, right, maybe we get to the place where we are totally familiar, so that this is just a natural expression. There's equanimity. The mind is like a motionless mountain. Wherever we want to concentrate, we do it effortlessly. So there's a real difference between the 8th and the 9th stage in terms of effort-based and effortlessness. This is a wonderful roadmap for the practice. I'll see if I can drop it right. And I don't know if I can connect something to the chat. Can I put something in the chat? I don't know. But I can, yeah. Let me just drop that right in the chat for you all.
I think you can share.
Yeah, okay. Any questions or reflections, thoughts on that?
I would like to ask a question.
Yes.
What is the difference then if you have mastered the 9th stage of shamatha? What is the difference between that and dzogchen?
When you say, somehow it's not letting me drop it right in the chat, but I tell you what, I'm gonna just send it to you, Tracy, and then you can. Carol, when you ask, like between that, the 9th stage, and dzogchen, what do you mean by dzogchen?
Well, I mean the practice that, I can only say the practice that was given to me by my teachers that they called dzogchen.
Mm-hmm. And is that is it the meditation of dzogchen?
Yeah, that's the part I was referring to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just sent that to you. Well, first I would say that because I'm not at the 9th stage of shamatha practice, and my own practice of dzogchen meditation is fledgling and nascent, I can't speak to that from any experiential understanding to say, yeah, okay, you get to the 9th stage and this is, what it's like. What I would say is that, and I'll just say, Dzogchen is What is Dzogchen? Dzogchen's the
Resting in
natural
the
way.
state? I don't know.
Dzogchen's the natural way of everything. Dzogchen is a Tibetan term that means great perfection. It is a teaching that we find within the Nyingmapa school of Tibetan Buddhism, where we have 9 different vehicles or ways of engaging in the Buddhist teachings. And the pinnacle of all of them, what is really taught and posited as the most sublime and refined, is the 9th vehicle, which is called the vehicle of Ati Yoga, or Dzogchen, great perfection. And the meditation technique that we find in the Dzogchen approach absolutely incorporates both shamatha and vipassana. And that's, and we didn't talk about vipassana today, but that's also why I would say shamatha is not at all just something that is kind of for beginners and it's left behind. No, it really is the foundation of the most sublime and advanced kinds of meditation that we find within certainly Nyingmapa school of Tibetan Buddhism. Yeah.
I guess if there's, I mean, apart from experiential or realization, just in terms of scholarliness, you know, if there's like 9 stages of shamatha, well, is Dzogchen like after you complete the 9 stages, then you go into Dzogchen, or is there, I mean, it seems like the way everything's broken down into these steps and so theoretical, but how does that then segue into Dzogchen? That was more my question, more than like
Yeah.
the real realization of it.
Yeah. It's such a great question, Carol. It's like, where does Dzogchen fit into that, right?
Yeah.
And Dzogchen as a tradition involves different ways of introducing students to their own innate awareness. And so it is, I would say, a special feature of it is a direct introduction to awareness that allows a practitioner to make a differentiation between ordinary mind and pristine awareness. If somebody has trained a lot in this practice of shamatha, it can be easier to recognize what is pointed out when it is pointed out, because there has been the cultivation of stillness, of the capacity to peacefully abide single-pointedly, so that the mind is not just jumping all around. As we've said, that the gap, thoughts have become pacified. That definitely happens through the course of familiarity of doing this. So in some ways, Carol, I think that Dzogchen can fit into it at any stage and can be integrated as part of it in every stage. And we have entire treaties that present shamatha from a Dzogchen perspective. And I would say that Dzogchen, in its core practice that we find in what is referred to as trekshud practice or cutting through, doesn't use a focal point, doesn't use that kind of effort-based, contrived settling of the mind through tethering attention on an object. And yet training in doing that is a great support for fully qualified Dzogchen practice. And Dzogchen is definitely taught. This gets very complicated. There is both supported and unsupported shamatha practice. And these are also taught from a Dzogchen perspective. So not to confuse us all, but that is what I'll say about that right now.
Just one other thing. So is shamatha, though, always considered meditation with an object?
No, you can have,
Focus.
yeah, you can have supported and unsupported shamatha, and different masters teach what they are differently. So I was actually just talking to Tracy about this wonderful book that I was thinking, oh, maybe, it would be great to do some work with this. This is called Clarifying the Natural State by Dakpo Kashi Namgyal. And unsupported shamatha is described here as shamatha both with breathing and without breathing. So I think that's something to know, that shamatha is taught differently by different teachers in different traditions. And that's part of just the beauty and the diversity of the meditation instruction heritage that the Buddha Dharma has offered the world. Most of the time, shamatha starts with a focal point for the attention, and that's called supported shamatha. Yeah.
And then unsupported is without a focal point.
It's fine to think of it that way. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Is there anyone who is in the process of working to create a daily meditation practice that has some questions about what we did tonight, or some thoughts about? Better than not doing meditation is doing it. Then you have something to chew on, something to reflect on, an experience to enrich your understanding and to deepen. So a daily practice. Yeah, Deb?
Yeah, I was wondering if you find it beneficial to try to meditate at the same time of day, from day to day to day, or whatever, dabble and see if there's a time that resonates.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I would say dabble to see what time feels good for you, what time feels easier, and then try to be regular with that. I think that's very helpful to develop a routine about it. So every day you get up and have a cup of coffee or do whatever you need to do, and then the next thing you do is 15 minutes of sitting meditation or whatever it is. Yeah. And I see some people do better in the evening, some people do better in the morning. I haven't heard a lot of people say, yeah, 12 o'clock noon, right in the middle of my day is my time. I mean, if we got things to do during the day, that might be hard, right? Not impossible. And short meditation breaks during the day are very, very powerful.
Hey, Christina.
Carl, yes.
Can I just add to that?
Please. Yeah.
I got a little app that will sound a little alarm, just a very nice little chime about every hour, about 5 minutes to the hour, just to remind me to stop, even if it's just for a second. But I usually try to get a 1 minute meditation in during that time, just to kind of remind myself, that all this stuff that's going on is just all this stuff that's going on and nothing more than that. And I recommend not doing it at noon or at the hour, because that's when everything starts and it becomes more of a nag than a reminder to calm down. But yeah, I think that's a great tool just to remind yourself during the day, and it keeps your practice going throughout the day.
Thank you, Carl.
What's the app called, Carl?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just, I couldn't use the reminders and stuff like that because it wants you to acknowledge them. This one just, I think it's called, I don't remember what it's called.
Okay.
There's a ton of them out there. And all it does is just sound in a little alarm, puts a little message on the screen, and goes away. And that's all I needed.
I'm interested in the name because I've tried to do this with my iPhone reminders, and exactly, I have to press the button to turn it off.
I got angry. It made me angry. Leave me alone. I'll send you the app.
Okay.
Or send you the pointer to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, very helpful. So it isn't just something that we do on the cushion. That's not the point. If we don't have anything that we're baking in a formal practice, then there is not much flavor we can carry through into the day. So they're both important. But if we just bake something and we don't share it, we don't actually get to digest it in the course of our lived daily experience, then we also don't get the full nutritional value of what we cook. I love metaphors. Maybe I'll bake something today. I don't know what I'll bake. I'm gonna bake something. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's just end tonight with a dedication. And in the Buddhist tradition, we talk about kind of bringing forth a positive intention before we begin any kind of activity. And so tonight, as we gathered together, my intention was to have a meaningful hour and some time with all of you. And then as we practice together to do that fully focused on that, so the main practice which we commit to fully. And at the end, to dedicate whatever goodness and benefit we have experienced here and co-created together, may it reverberate and bring further goodness, healing, benefit for all beings, ecosystems. You might have some individuals particularly in mind for you tonight that would benefit in different ways from some positive energy. I was saying to Tracy just before we began, for me right now, it's just the entire west coast of the United States in flames, and the incredible amount of suffering and difficulty so many people out there are experiencing right now. So just offering whatever goodness we have co-created here together tonight so that this can ease. May all beings throughout all world systems find happiness and its causes, be free from all kinds of pain and suffering and all of its causes, be able to find a place of happy equanimity and live believing in the equality of all that lives. Thank you for joining tonight. I look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thanks for
Good night, everybody.
teaching. Thanks for teaching tonight, Chris.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Everybody who's interested, Choji Rinpoche will be giving the transmission for Karma Lingpa's Hearing Upon Liberation, which is also known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Colorado time. The link for this, it'll be on YouTube, so even if you go to the PMC YouTube page, you'll see it start live from there, but the link is everywhere on all the platforms where, including the web page and our Facebook pages and things like that. So it's really a precious opportunity to receive the reading transmission of this text. It's not often given, so it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to tune in, no matter what tradition of meditation you practice. So hope to see you all on Sunday and next week. And thanks again, Chris. That was wonderful.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you all. All right.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
All right.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.